Greetings, my dear friends. On the 30th of June 2026, Victor Gao threatened China is the upper riparian state as far as Brahmaputra is concerned at the International Conference on the Indus Water called by Pakistan at Islamabad. The objective was very clear. He wanted to show that China is standing with its iron brother Pakistan. However, India decided that it will ignore this threat and continued with the development as far as Indus water is concerned and continues to do so even today. Therefore, we had did the first episode of the Geopolitics of Water, where we spoke about the Indus and how much is Pakistan dependent on India and how little India is dependent as far as China is concerned. Let's move on from there and look at China. Can China actually make do the threat it has laid out as far as India is concerned? Can China do an Indus with Brahmaputra? Welcome, my dear friends, to Chak Simplifies, your channel to demystify, simplify complex geopolitical issues into very small, easily digestible, understood bites. In this episode, the second of the series of the Geopolitics of Water, we will investigate and answer the very, very simple questions. Can China do it? Does it have the necessary wherewithal, whether it is in terms of engineering or finances? Does India need to be concerned? What is India doing to minimize that impact? And how do I think India should respond? So let's take a look at China first. The overall China. China is approximately 20% of the global population, but it has only 6% of water. Most of it comes from Tibet. That is the essential reason why China annexed Tibet and will never let it go, so long as it can manage to do so. 90% of the Chinese population lives in the east. 90% of the water is in the west. 400 out of the 660 cities of China are facing water shortages. The water availability per person is approximately 184 cubic meters. Water scarcity level is 1,500 cubic meters. By the year 2000, almost 70% of Chinese lakes and rivers were polluted. 11 of the 31 provinces are below the World Bank level of water scarcity of 1500 meter cube. What is China's answer to all this? Build dams. It is the most dammed nation on earth. Over 60,000 dams dot its countryside. It's also the answer was to divert water from the west to the east, from the south to the north, so that it can get water to the hungry east and north. The Tibetan plateau is the source of water as far as the Chinese are concerned. Take a look at the plateau. Look at the rivers that are flowing through it. Almost all major Chinese rivers, in fact, all major rivers of Asia start from here. It is therefore nicknamed the Asian Water Tower. It feeds the major rivers like the Yangtze, the Yellow River, the Mekong, the Brahmaputra. It provides over 30% of China's total freshwater needs, serving over 1 billion people downstream. The river Brahmaputra originates at the Angsai Glacier in western Tibet, somewhere near Mount Kailash, at an altitude of approximately 5,000 meters. The roof of the world, Tibet, it flows along the southern Tibet for approximately 1,700 kilometers and is among the world's highest rivers. At the Great Bend, near the Namcha Barua peak, it does almost a U-turn and carving out the Yarling Sampo Grand Canyon, which is the deepest canyon on earth, and starts entering India. A river that flows through 3 major countries. In China, it is called the Yarling Sampo. It enters India as a raging mountain torrent, dropping over 2,000 meters at the Great Bend. It enters as the river Siang, or sometimes even called Dibang, at Pasighat in Arunachal Pradesh. After the confluence with the Lohit at Sadia in Assam, it is called the Brahmaputra. Here it becomes the braided giant. Its width goes almost as broad as 10 kilometers. It looks like an ocean. Believe me, I've seen it at Guwahati, and that's what it looks. It enters Bangladesh as Jamuna, merges with Padma, finally emptying itself in the Bay of Bengal. The Himalayan ridgeline acts as a major barrier for the free flow of the monsoons, the southwest monsoons or the northeast monsoons. Yaling Sangpo collects approximately 15% of its water in the leeward side of the Great Himalayan Ridge, enters India, and here is where it picks up 85% of its water. The major tributaries of Brahmaputra are Subansiri, Seong, Sayang, Dibang, Delai, and Lohit. Brahmaputra accounts for about 30% of India's freshwater, 40% of India's hydroelectric power generation. It is prone to floods, ravaging most of Assam and thereafter Bangladesh. As we speak, there are floods in Assam right now. The hydroelectric potential is tremendous. 2,000 meters drop at the Great Bend, phenomenal hydroelectric potential. China has been building dams here. It has built 8 run-of-the-river dams from the Zangpo. It plans a massive dam at the Great Bend at Medog. It will generate 60 gigawatts of electricity, 3 times the electric generation of the Three Gorges Dam. It accounts for 30%, like I said, of India's total water resources. And it is very obviously a major geopolitical concern for all the states here. China tries to show its water hegemony, and it feels it can weaponize this water. It has done so with Mekong as far as Thailand and Vietnam are concerned. There are no water treaties with China. India has none. Bangladesh, incidentally, has a treaty with China for sharing of water data. The vulnerability of this river with respect to monsoon is tremendous. Come the monsoon, the Brahmaputra swells up, the monsoons go, the Brahmaputra is not as big. Glaciers are melting. Glacier flows also acts as one major source as far as Yangling Sakpo is concerned. Dams, these align with the broader Belt and Road Initiative, and China tries to increase its economic and strategic influence across Asia. By developing critical infrastructure at key locations, China is trying its best to deepen regional dependencies on its economic and technological powers. China is facing major water stress. It has built, like I said, over 60,000 dams to feed its north and east. The Medog Dam is one more step in this strategy, and it offers tremendous hydroelectric capabilities and geopolitical leverage over its major rival, India. So what is this mega project, the Medog River Project? It's a huge dam at the Great Bend. The construction started last year in 2025. This dam will hold water in the Great Bend. 3 large tunnels will carry this water under the mountain for power generation of 60 gigawatts. The water stored in this bend would be transported across mountain ranges into Yuan, a few thousand kilometers away, through multiple ranges and glaciers. China, incidentally, is also building a dam over the Irrawaddy River at Mistone to generate about 6 gigawatts of power and divert water for irrigation for itself. This mega project is, at least China is hoping, that will spur growth, create demand for steel and cement, revive employment and industry during slowdown. The bonus obviously is leverage over India, a water bomb to keep it in check. But is it? The other part of the question, if you remember, I didn't mention that China is trying to shift water from the south to the north. It is called the Western route. It's a family of concept, not just one single project. It is a route which is long running plenty of water in the south. How can you transport them to the hungry east and the north? Feasibility studies were called for in the 14th five-year plan, but feasibility studies is not equal to an actual project. Right? It's a major engineering challenge as far as China is concerned. The Yarling Sangpo, like I said, drops 2,000 meters in elevation. It is suitable for power generation? Yes. But from a depth of 2,000 meters, you now have to pump water back 2,000 meters, transport it across a mountain range to another valley, and from there another valley. How feasible is it? Take a look at the contours that are there. Look at where upstream there's a contour line, and then the Great Bend where Brahmaputra enters India after that into Siang. Water, please remember, follows gravity. It must or it cannot cross a watershed so easily. The huge hydraulic head that is required to cross this terrain needs tremendous power and engineering. Some sort of a local limited transfer, possible. Inter-basin transfer, maybe, probable. Yarlung diversion, unlikely. But a transformational diversion, well, I don't see technical feasibility, at least not as of present. The Great Bend is very easy, very simple for hydropower generation. Water is already moving downhill. Large elevation creates the hydraulic head. Turbines can convert this gravitational potential into electricity. And China does have tremendous extensive experience of large hydropower projects and tunneling. But when it comes to diversion and taking water from one basin to the other, it has to cross various watersheds. It has to manage the elevation differences. Large volumes of water will need larger tunnels and reservoirs and will need pumping as much. Bigger the diversion, bigger the cost. Higher the risk of geology, seismology, and ecology. So what is the engineering scorecard? You can clearly see out hydropower, it's a real project. Construction is already underway. But can it dry out India? Can it stop all the water? Well, that is hydrologically unrealistic. So is the Medog Dam itself viable? There are risks here. The environment is the biggest. The environment impact, if carried out, has not been published. The Himalayas, don't forget, are seismically the most active regions in the world, at least one of the most active. Large infrastructure projects here are always dangerous and risky. Potential dam failure, mismanagement, especially during extreme weather events, can lead to catastrophe. Construction of dam, artificial lake, embankments caused a major earthquake in Sichuan in 2008. Over 50,000 people died in it. There was repeated speculation over the Three Gorges Dam, and people said there are leaks that are developing here. It is also claimed, at least so do people, that it has reduced the rotation speed of the earth. Medog is 3 times the size of the Three Gorges Dam. Diplomatic challenges are also significant. China has a history of unilateral decision making, and especially on transboundary rivers. For example, the Mekong. no legally binding agreements with downstream nations. Loss of face is something which China has faced with Venezuela in Persian Gulf, even during this Op Sindoor with Pakistan. Does China have the stomach for a fight? Can it actually take military action or stand up to its rights? It has not done so far. China is also in the throes of significant political upheaval. On one plane, Xi Jinping has solidified himself. On another, he looks to be the weakest. Just recently, Ma Xingri has been sacked from the Politburo on the 14th of July. It is the third sacking in the current term. The Central Military Commission has only two members, Xi himself and Jiang Zemin, out of the 7 members that are supposed to be there. 5 seats are empty. The PLA is virtually leaderless. Its weapon systems are questionable. Economically, China is hurting. The trade war is hurting and hurting bad. Manufacturing is slowing down. Inflation is rising, so is unemployment. Domestic demand is stagnant, depends primarily on exports for its growth, and it is exporting at lower prices so that it can show exports are rising. Denial of technology by the US, denial of visas for link with PLA are all questions which China is fighting with. The European Union is putting additional tariffs, especially on the Chinese electric vehicles. BYD is rumored to be the next Evergrande as far as the auto sector is concerned. The banks are failing. They need bailout. Consumer loans are tanking. Q2 GDP reported just a few days back was the lowest since 2022. China claims to be about 4%. Independent economists say it is probably zero or just below zero. Internal debt is over 300% of its GDP. Question is, what is the GDP value? 18 trillion as reported by China, then it is at 300%. If you take independent economists into board, then this figure of GDP drops to almost 10 trillion. Liquidity injections into the economy have not spurred the consumption. 50-year bonds that were on sale recently found no takers, indicating poor confidence as far as Chinese economy is concerned. What about the social needs of the people? The people of China gave up personal liberty for economic prosperity. That economic prosperity is under threat right now. Unemployment is growing, wages are falling. The one-child policy has skewed the demography, and the demography is falling and falling so rapidly that some people are actually scared. The Chinese youth are following what they call tankping or lie flat. We will do nothing. The Medog can give impetus for growth, generate markets for steel, cement, revive the industry, provide employment. Yet, where will China find the $167 billion to fund this dam? Now let's take a look at the water. The water content, when it's entering India, is 31 billion cubic meters. As it exits India, it is 606 billion cubic meters. You can imagine, China controls only the headwaters, not the river. So, the hydrological reality which one must face is China cannot dry out India. Only 15% of water comes in China. The rest is all in India. Therefore, even if China develops major water storage, it still can do nothing, not too much as far as India is concerned. Yes, storage is possible at the Great Bend, significant storage. By this, it would alter the ecology of the region. Will Great Bend then be seismically stable? What happens in case there is a large artificial dam which breaks or the artificial lake that overflows? I gave the example of the Sichuan earthquake in 2008. We have an example of the Parachu Lake a little later on Satluj. The real question is how can China affect the river's hydrography till such time the costs become prohibitive. This gives you a rough idea of how much water coercion power does China really have. Turning off Brahmaputra close to zero. Creating uncertainty very much. Because with smaller storages, it can withhold water, slow down water, or temporarily give extra water, creating a problem as far as India is concerned, and thereafter Bangladesh. So there are layers that China can use or levers that China can use. With water quantity, these levers are fairly small. Timing, it has water with moderate levers. But not providing water information, not creating an uncertainty, this lever is reasonably strong. This is what India has to work on. China may not build a mega diversion dam, but it may prefer to just keep that capability with itself so as to introduce some sort of uncertainty. So what should India prepare for? India is already prepared for China developing or generating large amounts of power from the Great Bend. But with respect to conflict-related manipulation, Chinese probabilities are very low. Moderate transfers of water, moderate upstream regulation is there. So what is India doing? India is not looking at countering the water weapon. It is developing water resilience. By resilience, I mean it is developing multi-purpose projects which can store water, manage floods, and generate power at the same time. It would accelerate these projects and wherever environmentally and socially defensible. Build a real-life, real-time hydrological data, intelligence infrastructure, architecture for the Brahmaputra. And use diplomacy. So let's see what India has actually done. Notable projects, the big ones are the Upper Subansari, the Lower Subansari, the Teesta 5, the Teesta 3, but the mother of all of them is the Upper Siang. Let's focus on this. Upper Siang has a storage capacity of 9 billion cubic meters of water. It will generate 11 gigawatts of electricity. This dam would be able to act in a push-pull method. When China releases great amounts of water, it can store that water. And in the lean season or dry season, it can release water so that Brahmaputra remains navigable throughout the year. The message it is giving to China is, we can counter you. We can control sedimentation also. Right? India wants Brahmaputra to be navigable because it would ease its problem of transportation. It is constantly dredging this river for the purpose. It also has an interbasin transfer plan. The National Water Development Authority has proposed linking of the Brahmaputra with the Ganges basin so that the Farakka navigation is kept alive and it can control floods in Assam by releasing water into the Ganges. The Manas Sankosh Teesta Ganga link connects the Manas and the Sankosh rivers, major tributaries of Brahmaputra flowing out of Bhutan into Assam, routes their water westwards via West Bengal into the Teesta river into the Ganges at Farakka, upstream of Farakka. An alternate route is the Jogi Gopa Teesta Farakka link. This link will go entirely through the chicken snake area within Indian territory and reach the Farakka barrage. The most underrated countermeasure is water intelligence. Satellite monitoring of reservoirs, satellite monitoring of the glaciers as far as the Yarlung is concerned. getting real-time hydrological and met information data fusion, glacier, snow melting, rainfall monitoring, and AI-enabled flood forecasting and reservoir stimulation will all help India in managing this issue and ensure China does not surprise India hydrologically. It has been taken up diplomatically, making Brahmaputra a regional water security issue along with Bangladesh. Sadly, relations with Bangladesh today are not as good, and Bangladesh has gone ahead and signed a treaty with China. A broad basin framework would create sufficient diplomatic pressure on China to rethink any major action here. India has concerns, very genuine concerns. The Himalayas, like I said, are ecologically very sensitive, geologically unstable. A big dam construction could be dangerous. India fears from this ecological disaster and how that would affect the ecology, the southwest monsoons and the northeast monsoons. But don't forget, the northeast monsoons enter India through this Great Bend gap, through this gap, and the southwest monsoons enter China through the same gap. So can China do an Indus with us? Well, let's take river by river. Indus, no sense, no point at all. There's not much water here. On top of it, the slope of the water is towards India. Even if it constructs a dam, that water will start seeping towards India. Their own highways will get flooded. Sutlej, yes. Remember the Parachu incident? Brahmaputra, there is some possibility but very limited. Therefore, even if it blocks water, even if it stores water, it may end up helping India because it will store water during monsoons, because that's the time water is there. And when it releases that water, Indian flood control activities would be benefited this thing. But sudden releases could remain a headache. The strategy out here, the insight one can get is China does not need to control water. It needs to control only the uncertainty. India needs not to worry about it. India needs to control or manage its vulnerability downstream. India does not need a treaty to protect itself. India relies on its ability to use geography, engineering, intelligence, and strategic foresight. China's weapon is upstream geography. India's response is downstream reliance. The question is not China can divert the Brahmaputra. The question is how much control over the river can China realistically acquire? How much of that vulnerability will India let China control or create? That, my dear friends, is the real geopolitics of Brahmaputra. We continue living in very interesting times, my dear friends. If you approve of this video, leave a like, do comment. Also hype this video. That's a new feature on YouTube. And if you hype the video gets benefited, you don't lose anything. As always, don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you have not done so. Press the bell icon to be notified of all new videos. Share the video with your family and friends. And as always, I look forward to your continued support, your suggestions, your comments. Until next time, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.